All right, this is the first video for the tortilla. We're gonna be making homemade tortillas today. If you look at your recipe for the homemade tortillas, it just gives you the ingredients for the actual tortillas. You need to write in for the cinnamon sugar if your group wants to put extra butter spread and cinnamon sugar on their tortillas to eat them. So what you would need to add on there is you would need to add for the cinnamon sugar is you want to add 1/4 teaspoon of cinnamon, 1/4 cup of sugar, okay? And then you're also going to add 2 additional tablespoons for spread, okay? I want everyone to also add on an additional tablespoon for the butter, for the tortillas. So instead of putting 1 tablespoon of butter for the tortillas, you're gonna put 2 tablespoons of butter for the tortillas, and then you'll add in 2 extra for the spread. So total, you're gonna get 1/4 cup of butter here, and you're gonna, for the cinnamon sugar, you'll add on those I already mentioned, okay? So you wanna add those things on if your group wants the cinnamon sugar and the extra butter for spread, okay? But even if your group does not want extra butter for spread, you still need to add in an additional tablespoon just for the tortillas because we're gonna put 2 tablespoons in the tortillas instead of 1. Just, this is out of personal preference. I think they come out better that way. All right, so now let's go ahead and talk about the equipment we're gonna need. For our tray, we're only going to need a few things, okay? You're gonna need a liquid measuring cup filled up with 1 or 1/2 cup of water, just depending on how you wanna do it. Because you're gonna be measuring 1/4 cup of butter in your thing. If you choose to just do 2 tablespoons of butter, then you'll do it the ounce way that we did last lab, where you fill it up to your lowest level of ounces and then increase the water to 1 ounce. But if you're doing the extra butter for the spread, you're gonna have 1/4 cup of butter. So I usually just bring my water level up to 1 cup and then scoop the butter in until it says 1 1/4 cup, okay? So you wanna have your liquid measuring cup filled with the right amount of water you need. I already pre-measured that beforehand and it's sitting right here on my tray. You're gonna need a spoon for scooping the butter. You're going to need a little bowl for the cinnamon and a 1/4 teaspoon for the cinnamon. So that's all you need for your tray. A liquid measuring cup filled with the appropriate amount of water depending on which amount of butter you're getting. A spoon, 1/4 teaspoon, and a small bowl. So that's everything for the tray, okay? Now let's talk about the equipment you're gonna need. So when you're measuring the head cook, so the assistant cook goes to get the ingredients, the head cook has several ingredients they need to measure in the unit. They're gonna need to measure the flour, so you wanna get a medium mixing bowl to measure your flour. You want a small bowl to measure your salt, okay? The salt is 1/2 teaspoon, so you want a 1/2 teaspoon for that. Oh, the flour was 2 cups, so you want to have your cup, 1 cup of flour, and then something to level off like a straight edge spatula or back of a butter knife. You're going to need a small bowl to measure the baking powder, and you want a 1 teaspoon to measure the baking powder, okay? And then you'll need the liquid measuring cup again to measure the 3/4 cup of water, okay? And then you'll need another small bowl and a 1/4 cup and a leveling tool such as a straight edge spatula or butter knife to measure the 1/4 cup of sugar, okay? So remember we added that on for the cinnamon and sugar section. All right, so that's all of the measuring stuff you're gonna need. Now we're gonna go ahead and add on to the tools that we're gonna need for each step. So in step 1, it says whisk the flour, salt, and baking powder together. So you're gonna need a whisk for that, okay? And then it says that you're going to cut in the lard, or we're using butter in this case, although lard does taste very good in tortillas. We're gonna cut that in with the pastry blender. So this is the same tool, the pastry blender is the same tool that we used in the danishes. And then in step 2, it says you're gonna add the water and mix the dough until it comes together. So you're going to need a wooden spoon for that, which I neglected to grab. So we need a wooden spoon. So we're gonna need a wooden spoon to mix that dough together, okay? And then it says we're going to have a lightly floured surface to do our kneading. So you want to keep your flour out, so you could do that. And then it's going to have you divide the dough. You don't really need any tools for that, but it says to roll it out. So you're going to need it's next to my computer. You're going to need a rolling pin to roll out the dough in that step. And then it says preheat a large skillet over medium-high heat. So you're going to need a large skillet and a turner spatula as well as a plate to put your tortillas on when they are done. And I believe I went over all of the tools that you're going to need. So let's go ahead and start mixing it up and doing the steps, okay? So what we're going to do now is we're going to whisk the flour, the salt, and the baking powder together in the mixing bowl. So we're going to whisk that together with the whisk until it's thoroughly mixed. Okay, so now we're going to cut in the butter. So I got a 1/4 cup of butter. So I need 2 tablespoons to go in the tortillas, and I need 2 tablespoons for spreading. So I'm just going to go ahead and half this. Take half of the butter, put it in here for the tortillas. I'm done with the whisk now. I'm going to take over and use the pastry blender, and we're going to cut it in just like we did during the danishes. So you just cut that in using the pastry blender until it gets to be like cornmeal is what the recipe tells you. And there's different ways that you can actually make tortillas. This is a very simple recipe that works well for students at school, but there are other different ways that you can make them. There are many different cultures that make tortillas many different ways and use a tortilla press instead of using a rolling pin. So it kind of just depends on how often they make tortillas. In my personal opinion, homemade tortillas taste way better than store-bought tortillas, in case anybody was wondering about that. Okay, so you want to get that nice and mixed up over here. Make sure that you don't have any huge chunks of butter. Okay, so you can see that there's a lot of flour. There's not a ton of butter, so it's not going to look as mealy as the one that we did in the danishes. Okay, so then the next step, it's going to tell us to add the water and mix until the dough comes together, and then we're going to place on the floured surface and knead until it's smooth and elastic. So we're just going to go ahead and add that water and just stir that up. And this is where the measuring is really important, that if you didn't measure that water correctly, your dough is not going to work out. Okay, so as you can see, it's going to be a very dry dough. That's what it's supposed to look like. And you want to do it until it starts to come together. So see how it's coming together? It's just like one solid mass there. Okay, so now we're going to start to use our hands here. And I start out my kneading in the bowl to make sure I get all that, or as much flour as possible. So I want to flour my hands, so make sure your hands are washed before you do this. And I just want to start kneading and kind of mixing it with my hands in the bowl initially before I start to hand knead it on the counter. So this is just to make sure that any flour that's in the bowl that is going to be absorbed into the dough gets absorbed into the dough. You're going to do this basically until your dough gets closer to be one solid ball there. Then, after that, we're going to take it out and we're going to sprinkle a little bit more flour onto our counter here. And when you knead, you want to use the palm of your hands, and this is really important, that kneading, you don't squish it together with your fingers like this. So watch carefully. Everybody watch carefully. You fold the dough, you push with the palm of your hand like this. Okay? fold it, push, fold it, push. And then you'll notice as you knead, your dough might start to feel more sticky, and that's because your outside that was dry is now going inside, and the inside that's sticky is coming to the outside. So now we're going to add in some of that flour from the bowl, a little bit more flour from here, and we're going to keep doing that until we have a nice, solid, even dough, okay? Now, in the danishes, we were worried about over mixing. With the tortillas, we're not worried about over mixing. Mixing it a lot and kneading the dough is a good thing, okay? So you want to knead that until it's nice and solid and it doesn't feel sticky anymore. So if you keep kneading it and it starts to feel sticky again, then you definitely are like, okay, I need to add a little bit more flour. I like to take some from the bowl, kind of knead that in there. So you just push with your hands, with the palms of your hands, push and fold, not grabbing like this. This is the biggest mistake you can make right here because that's breaking apart your gluten strands. We're trying to develop the gluten. If you've ever seen anybody like toss and turn a pizza dough to make it flat, you know how they kind of like almost looks like they're playing with it? It's stretchy like that because there's something called gluten inside the flour, and it makes it stretchy like that. It's a protein, okay? And so developing that gluten is what gives it a really nice texture. It helps with the flavor. So you definitely want to knead it until it's nice and solid and not sticky anymore. Okay. All right, so once your dough is pretty solid, you're going to break it up into, it says 12, I believe. Let's see. Yes, divide the dough into 12 equal pieces. So you're going to divide it into sizes about this big, and you twist. So go ahead and look right here. You're going to twist the dough off like this to separate it. Do you see how I did that? Okay, so the sizes are going to be about this big. Okay, they're not super big. And you're going to roll those into balls. So I'm going to take that, roll it out into a nice ball in my hands, and then and I would do it to 12, but since it's a demo, I'm just showing you one. So I'm going to scoot away the rest of the dough, make sure that my counter is nice and smooth with fresh flour before I roll. Okay, I also want to make sure that I roll out I flour my rolling pin as well so that it doesn't stick to my dough. Okay, I want a nice small ball. I like to tuck the edges under to make it nice and round, okay? Then I'm going to take that out right there, and I'm going to roll that out into the tortilla. Now your tortillas won't be perfectly round, and that's okay. You're going to roll it as thin as possible. You don't want to make them thick or they won't cook in the center, okay? Now, since I know I'm about to cook my tortilla, before I finish rolling out, I'm going to start heating up my pan. So I'm going to put that and start it on high just so it could heat up. Then when I cook it, I'm going to turn it down to what? Medium or medium high. So I'm going to roll that nice and thin, okay? And that's okay if it's not a perfect circle right there. Now if you had a tortilla press, those make it a perfect circle. All right, so you got your nice and thin dough right here. And then we're going to take it over and we're going to cook it on our skillet, but we want to wait for it to heat up. So we're going to end this video right now.